Mark, I say Convention of the States, and about 90% of America think I'm talking about some big continental breakfast thing in a conference room in the Ramada. They don't understand what a Convention of the States is. Would you please do me the honor of dumbing it down for people like me?
Sure, and it doesn't take much to dumb it down. It's pretty simple. It's in the Constitution. It's found in the second clause of Article 5, and that gives you and I, acting through our state legislatures, the power to call a convention of states with the purpose of proposing amendments to restrain federal tyranny. The way the process works specifically is that it takes 2/3 of states or 34 states to make application or call for a convention. Then the states will appoint delegations. They'll travel to a convention. They'll debate potential amendments. And then it takes 26 days to get those amendments out for ratification. They're only suggestions at that point, and it takes 38 states to ratify any proposed amendments to the United States Constitution. We've never done it before. We have 27 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. They've all been proposed by Congress. The problem with this is that Congress will never propose amendments that restrain their own power, things like term limits and a balanced budget amendment, taking away their power and giving it back to the states. That's why we need a convention of states now.
Okay, so again, please correct me if I screw any of this up. I just want to understand. A bunch of states get together and say, we're going to get together and come up with amendments. They get together and come up with the amendments, and they just put them out there in the atmosphere. And if 38 states sign up for them, there's nothing the federal government can do. That is now law.
Yeah, that's pretty correct. I mean, there's a little bit more structure to the process. When you go to convention, the amendments that can be discussed are within the subject matter areas that have been proposed by the states. So in the case of our call for a convention, they could discuss anything that would propose term limits on federal officials. That would include not just Congress, but the deep state, bureaucrats, staffers, also judiciary. They could propose anything that would impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, things like a balanced budget amendment, imposing generally accepted accounting principles or tax and spending caps. And then they could propose anything that would limit federal authority, jurisdiction, or scope, things like saying, no, you can't be involved in education, or you can't be involved in energy, or you can't be involved in the environment. Those are the broad limitations on the power of a convention to even have discussion.
Okay, Mark, God forgive me, but I'm doing the best I can not to get my hopes up right now. I prefer to remain a very cynical, bitter human being, but do we have a chance of actually doing this? Because this sounds really nice to me.
Look, I think it's a long, hard road, and that's how the founders intended it, because this is the highest bar in the American system of constitutional governance. But so far, 15 states have already completed the process, so we have 19 to go. I expect Wisconsin to be number 16 here in the next couple of weeks or so. North Carolina is right on the verge. South Carolina is close. Pennsylvania, Ohio look good. So I think we're going to make it, but it is not an easy road for sure.
The show tonight is about national divorce, and just so you know my position on it, I believe we should get one. I don't take any pleasure in that. I see the country dividing rapidly and heading down a really ugly road, and I don't want to see a single person in this country get hurt. So I think we should just go our separate ways. You can feel free to fillet me, Mark. I won't yell, where am I right, where am I wrong?
I think you're 100% correct. I think it's time for a national divorce, but you and I might disagree, and hopefully I can help sway you my way on what a national divorce looks like. The history of this country is of a divorced nation living together in relative harmony. If you go all the way back to the pre-founding era, the colonies didn't really like each other. You go into the Revolutionary War, they still didn't like each other, but they fought against an existential threat. They disliked each other so much they came out of that war and set up the Articles of Confederation, which didn't work because they weren't willing to give a central government any power. And then ultimately in 1787, they meet again, and they are contentious. They don't like each other. They don't trust each other. And out of that dislike and distrust comes the greatest form of government ever known to mankind, in my opinion, for the preservation of liberty, and that's federalism. And what's happened over the last 115 years is we've radically drifted away from federalism. Federalism, in its pure form and the way it was set up by the founders, allows us to govern ourselves as we see fit in the states, essentially, as you said, post-national divorce. But we've got a sort of custody agreement, if you could say that, on a national basis where we do a limited amount of things together. We need to do those things. There are existential threats in the world that we can't face alone. Even as a Texan, and we Texans love to talk about secession, we know Texas can't stand alone in the world.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.